Hello everyone, this is Simply Put Finances, a show where we discuss money and how to use it in our homes. I'm Spark, your host, and welcome to my blanket fort. Let's get started. Today we're going to talk about why debt is a bad thing. This is a pretty loaded topic, so I hope you're ready. First off, something that we need to clarify are some semantics here. Debt is synonymous with a lot of different words that we hear in our culture. Whenever you hear a commercial or something talking about financing available, they're talking about going into debt. It's one of those fancy words that they like to use because debt can sound scary. A lot of the time when you hear the word credit can be synonymous with debt. Credit cards. Credit cards are just debt cards. There's no difference there. A credit score is a debt score. One example of where credit is not referring to debt is if your bank says we have credited $100 to your account. You're not going into debt $100 there. It's been given to you. It's one of those words in the English language that can be a little tricky. So whenever you hear the word credit, make sure you understand if we're talking about debt. Debt and loan, they're synonymous. Going into debt means you've taken out a loan. Using a credit card means you've taken out a loan. Obtaining financing means you're going into debt and taking out a loan. Understand that debt, financing, credit, and loans can be and usually are synonymous. The Western world is a world of debt. When I was graduating high school, I had a conversation with my oldest brother. He explained to me how I get a car. He said, you go into debt, you buy this car that you can't afford. That's me saying that. You buy this car that you can't afford. It's usually a 5 or a 6 year loan. You pay it off for 3 or 4 years. You sell the car and use whatever money you got from the sale as a down payment on the next car, and you just repeat. I didn't know any better. I believed him, thought it was fine. I would bet that a lot of you have heard the same thing. In fact, there are a lot of economists out there who argue that debt is the way things are meant to be done. Credit cards, financing for cars, for dishwashers, for homes, obviously. That this is how the economy is meant to function. In an article published by Dave Ramsey on his website, it discusses how 8 out of 10 Americans have some form of debt, and 7 out of 10 Americans believe that debt is necessary. And 85% of Americans said that they use debt to live beyond what they can actually afford, living beyond their means. And this isn't just a young generation thing. This isn't just an old generation thing. This is pervasive across Western culture. We live in a debt culture. Parents are teaching their kids that the best thing for them to do is to get a credit card as soon as they can to start building up their credit score. Parents are teaching their children that you need to go into debt to be a financially wise and prudent adult. And this is foolishness. A lot of you are going to disagree with me on this. I've got some evidence here to back up my claim. A reminder to you, as we go throughout the rest of this video, I have all of my sources in the link in the description underneath this video. Let's look at some numbers. Let's talk about student loans for a second. I'm going to have a different video discussing how to pay for college. But look at this table. In the same article that I got this table from, stated that student loan debt in America is increasing by $3,000 per second. So pause this video right now, look at how many seconds we've already been together, multiply that by 3,000, and that's how much more student loan debt American kids have gone into. Do it again at the end of this video. Do it again at the end of the day. How many seconds are in a day? Multiply that by 3,000. It's a very widespread issue, and you can look at this table for further details. This is a big deal, and millions of Americans have student loan debt. This is an issue. Let's look at car loans for a second. Over 100 million Americans have some form of auto loan. 100 million. According to this source, the average monthly payment on new car purchases was $515 a month, and the average monthly payment on used car purchases was $398 a month. Now again, you might be thinking, why is this a bad thing? I can't afford a car without doing this. How am I supposed to do it any other way? Let me show you. So let's again ask this question. Why is debt a bad thing? Debt is bad because it robs us of our ability to spend and save. So right now, let's talk about the spending. How does debt rob us of our ability to spend money? For the purpose of this video's argument, I'm going to use car loans as a primary example of my argument. You can apply this same argument to credit cards, to student loans, to installment loans for your phone, however you want. If you understand the principle of this argument I'm about to make, it'll apply to any other topic. So according to that data, average car payments are about $515 a month for a $31,000 car loan. Now, according to one source, your interest rate on that car loan is going to be dependent upon your credit score. Assuming that most of you do have a credit score, this will apply to you. If you don't have a credit score at all, then the lending agency would need to do a process called underwriting. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. According to this source, the average APR for a car loan is about 4.21%. So we're going to use that through our example here. Now, the numbers from here on out that I've gathered have been through a debt repayment calculator. You can type it into a search engine and find dozens of them online. I've used one for these numbers here. And again, I have a link in the description down below for the one that I used. If you paid $515 a month at 4.21% interest, it would take you 68 months, so just shy of 6 years, to complete that purchase. That means you would have spent $35,000 for your $31,000 car. Where did that extra money come from? Interest. So by the time your 68 months passed, you will have spent an additional $4,000 for your car. Now right there, you can stop and ask the question, how many of you imagination time. You're standing in the car lot with the salesman. You say that you want to buy this vehicle. The price tag is $31,099. And the salesman says, great, you want to buy this vehicle? It's actually not going to be $31,000, it's going to be $35,000. Chances are most of us would be like, excuse me, why did you just raise the price on me $4,000? You're going to spend an extra $4,000 on interest for this vehicle. So if you're not willing to accept a $4,000 price increase in the lot, well then why are we accepting it later through the form of interest? It's not fantastic math, because by the time you actually own this entire vehicle, by the time this vehicle is bought and paid for, and you've gone through all 68 payments of $515 a month, by the time this vehicle is actually yours, you've lost $21,000 worth of value on this vehicle and spent $4,000 doing it. This is why we crunch the numbers, to bring some attention to this. And then what most of the Western culture will do is after this 68 months has passed, or like my brother suggested, after 3 or 4 years has passed, then you sell the vehicle and you start the process over again. And this is how a lot of Americans, hundreds of millions of Americans, are doing things. And this is bad, and I'm going to explain why. Remember this table where we talked about the interest rate being based on your credit score? Well, where are you on there? One source says the average credit score in America is roughly 675. Well, that puts you here at the 7% mark. So if we look again at the same car at 7% for 60 months, we'll be spending $616 a month, spending $37,500 for our $31,000 car, and the depreciation continues. So at this example, this means that we're spending $37,500 for a car that when it finally becomes ours is only worth $11,000. This is where interest and depreciation for buying a brand new vehicle kicks us in the butt. Now let's talk about what else we can do with this money. Let's investigate the hypotheticals here. What could this money that we're spending on this car payment actually be doing for us? So in those previous examples, we were looking at monthly payments anywhere between $515 and $616 a month. Let's average it around $550. All right, so let's say you're prepared to spend $550 a month on a $31,000 brand new car. But then let's say you listen to Spark and decide instead of giving that money to the bank, you save it for yourself. You don't buy the vehicle yet. You will buy the vehicle, but you're not buying it yet. You're going to pay yourself first. Now, if you haven't heard that phrase, pay yourself first, or PYF, I have a whole video on it. You should definitely watch it. It's kind of foundational to everything that I'm teaching here today. The link is in the description down below. So you're spending $550 a month to yourself. You're saving it. Okay? That means after 12 months, after 1 year, you have $6,600. Using that math, that means in about 4.8 years, or 57 months or so, you would have enough cash to buy that vehicle outright. In cash. The same vehicle, the $31,000 vehicle, rather than paying for 60 or 68 months on that vehicle, if you saved up for less than 5 years, you could pay for it in cash. Now you might be thinking, oh boy, 2 or 3 or 4 months, what's the big deal? You actually save a lot more money than that than you realize. If you remember the numbers that we were showing, you're going to save $4,000 or $5,000 just on interest. Again, paying for this with cash is going to save you all of that interest. Plus, there's an extra, you might think that 2 or 3 months isn't that big a deal, but if you consider $550 a month for 3 months, that's another $1,600. So by choosing to save up with cash at $550 a month to buy this brand new vehicle, you can save anywhere between $5,500 to $6,500 just by choosing to pay cash. Now, so far we've just been talking about buying this brand new car. I'm just going to say that buying a brand new car is silly. There's no reason to do it. It's a luxury, and it's a luxury that most Americans can't afford. If you're in your retirement years and you're already rolling around in your nest egg and you're good, well then yeah, buy whatever you want. But for most Americans, most people in the Western culture, when the majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and don't even have $1,000 of cash in their savings account, you shouldn't be buying a brand new vehicle. So let's talk instead what your $550 a month could do for you in buying a used vehicle. So what would it look like if we saved $550 a month? Now, why again do I keep using that number? Because that's the number that a lot of Americans are willing to start paying per month anyway. See, here's the thing. This is the number that so many Americans are already willing to sign up and pay anyway. So all I'm suggesting you do right now is, instead of paying the bank $550 a month, which you're about to do anyway, just pay yourself. Don't pay them, pay yourself. So that's where that number's coming from. $550. What if we were to save that up for a year? Again, we have $6,600. Can you buy a used vehicle for $6,600? Yeah. Is it going to be the sweet new ride of the neighborhood? No. But if you have your values straight and you are considering the long-term potential and you're a two marshmallow person, which, if you don't know what that phrase means, I have another video called The Key to Financial Success that explains that. Links in the description down below. If you're a two marshmallow person, then you don't need the sweetest ride in the neighborhood. So in 1 year, not 60 months, not 5 years, but in 1 year, you could have a new used vehicle. But what if that's not good enough for you? What if your standard of living is higher than that? Well, in 2 years, you can afford a $13,000 vehicle. In 3 years, you can afford a $20,000 vehicle. 3 years. You were prepared to sign up for 5 years for that brand new vehicle, plus all the interest and the depreciation. But if you pay yourself the $550, in 3 years, you can buy a new used $20,000 vehicle, and you can get some pretty nice rides for $20,000. Again, nothing that's going to make you the talk of the neighborhood, but be a two marshmallow person and grow up. If the Joneses are going to judge you that harshly for what you're driving, you don't want to be friends with them anyway. So after 3 years of $550 a month, buying your $20,000 used vehicle, how much are you saving? Well, again, by doing this instead of buying the brand new vehicle, you've saved yourself that $4,000 to $5,000 of interest, plus the 2 or so years of $550 a month that's staying in your pocket rather than going to the bank. That's about another $14,000. So in total, by choosing to buy a used vehicle with cash after 3 years, you save yourself about $20,000. All right, the name of this show is Simply Put, and I've just thrown a lot of numbers at you. So, simply put, by saving up and paying cash for a used vehicle, rather than buying a new one by going into debt like most people do, you can save yourself tens of thousands of dollars. If you didn't follow all of that, if you didn't follow those numbers, jump this video back a couple minutes and go through it again. This is the stuff that's going to make a difference in your pocketbook and in your future, because we have to ask the question, what else could you do with that money? See, consider this. In the time that it would have taken you to pay off your first car loan, the 60 months at $550 a month, right? In the time that it would have taken you to pay off that first car loan, you can buy 2 nice used cars. And again, here's the math. $550 a month gets you $6,600 a year. And so if you did that for 2.5 years, you'd have $16,000. You can buy nice used vehicles for $16,000 each, which means, again, in the space of time where instead of you buying that brand new vehicle on a loan, you save up and pay cash, you could have 2 new, nice, used vehicles. So again, we come to the question, why is debt bad? Because it robs us of our ability to spend. And the numbers that I just showed you show you how that's true. These are basic numbers. And again, the calculator is in the link in the description down below if you want to toy around with your numbers. If you're thinking of buying a vehicle right now, doing it the Western developed way of going into debt and buying things that you can't afford, perhaps you should play around with that calculator a little bit and figure out what it's actually going to cost you. So we said that going into debt robs us of our ability to spend. And I've used that car example to show you just how damaging it can be. Let's now talk about how going into debt robs you of your ability to save. Let's go back to that same example we were just going through. Remember how we just said that by buying that used vehicle, you save about $20,000? Well, what else could that $20,000 do for you? I have another video called Opportunity Cost. The whole purpose of that video is to talk about what else could your money be doing for you besides what you're having it do for you right now. Links in the description down below, definitely worth watching. So let's say you took that $20,000 that we saved because we bought the used car instead. Let's say you took that and you invested it. If you invested it into an account that returns average 8% interest for 10 years, that $20,000 would more than double. If you put into an interest account that averages 10% and did that for 20 years, you'd have $134,000. By the way, this is with no additions. This is just that $20,000. You stick it in that account and you leave it there and you don't touch it, you don't put more money in, and you don't take any money out. If you sit it in there for 20 years at 10% interest, that one decision to not buy the brand new car, but instead to save up for 3 years and buy a used one, that one decision could make you over $100,000 of profit. And if you put it into an interest-bearing account of 12% for 30 years, that $20,000 could be $600,000. And if you want to know where these numbers are coming from, it's called a compound interest calculator. I have a link in the description down below for the one that I used. Again, just type it into any search bar and you'll find any number of ones that you can use. This is what debt costs you. Whether it's your car loan or your student loan or your installment loan on your phone or whatever it is, this is what debt costs you. Now, for the sake of this discussion, we're not talking about home loans. That's a bit different. We'll talk about that another day. For the sake of this video, we're talking about basically any other form of debt besides home loans, student loans included. And again, I have another video on the topic of paying for college. Now, these examples here are if we did not make any additions to the account, right? Well, what happens if we did? Okay, let's think long-term here right now, okay? We spend 3 years saving up for this vehicle. And we buy this $19,800 vehicle, right? Well, what if we spent the next 3 years making that $550 payment into our interest account, into our retirement account? And then 3 years later, right, after you've been doing that for 3 years, you go back to saving up for your next vehicle. So that means 3 years of saving for retirement, 3 years of saving for your next vehicle, 3 years of saving for retirement, 3 years of saving for your next vehicle. You do this back and forth. If you're making the payments of $550 a month, $550 a month into your interest account, $550 a month into your car savings fund, then that means that over the course of 6 years, you're going to average $275 a month into your retirement fund. So let's look at what that would do. You put in that $20,000 that you saved by not buying a new vehicle. You save that up and put that in as a lump sum into a retirement account and then proceed to make $275 a month payments into that investment. What would happen? Well, in 10 years at 8% interest, that $20,000 plus the regular monthly investments of $275 a month would give you $93,000. At 20 years at 10% interest, that becomes $350,000. And at 30 years at 12% interest, that becomes $1.4 million. In all reality, and by the math that I've just shown you, and that you can do on your own with some debt repayment calculators and compound interest calculators, just choosing to pay for used cars with cash and investing the remainder, you can retire a millionaire. Just based on the car decision alone. Never mind paying for your phone, paying for your washer and dryer, paying for the new couch set that you want for your living room, paying for the new roof on your house. Never mind all of those things that could add to this and make you even more wealthy. This is what debt is costing us. The ability to spend and save for our future. The average American household credit card debt is about $8,200. Think long term. What is that debt costing you? Now, a really common argument against this idea of not having any debt is that you need a credit score. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's really common for parents to encourage their children to get credit cards so they can build their credit score. This is foolishness. And here's why. One article that I found that encourages having a credit score gave 4 reasons as to why it's important to have a credit score. The first one they said was to have lower interest rates. A good credit score will lower your interest rates. The second reason they said is that a higher credit score will increase the likelihood of being approved for loans, such as car loans, phone loans, home loans, those kinds of things. A higher credit score can reduce your insurance rates. And lastly, it listed a higher credit score will make it easier for you to get approved for a home loan. Let's address each of these. So first off, you need a credit score so you can lower your interest rates. The money you save on not paying interest will be greater than the money you save on having lower interest rates. You only need to have low interest rates if you plan on living a life of debt. If you don't want to live a life in debt, then you don't need to have a good credit score or have a credit score at all. Credit scores only benefit those people who plan on living a life of debt. That's why credit and debt are synonymous. That's why we started that way. A credit score is a debt score. It is a loan score. Let's look at number 2. Credit scores make it easier for you to get approved for a loan. You only need a credit score if you plan on applying for loans, such as a car loan or otherwise. We'll get to the home loan in just a second. But as far as I need a credit score, my son needs a credit score so that he can get a car loan. Well, if he just saves up for 1 or 2 or 3 years and buys a used car with cash, then he's not going to need a credit score to buy a car. Credit scores only benefit you if you plan on going into debt. What about the insurance rates? Again, the amount of money you're going to save on not having to pay interest on your debts will be greater than the amount of money that you're going to save on having lower insurance rates. And lastly, the home loan approval. A lot of people get really touchy on this one. My child needs to have a credit score so that they can get a home. No, they don't. No, they don't. The process is called manual underwriting. The process by which your child can get a home loan without a credit score is called manual underwriting. Not every loan agency does it because they don't want to do it, because they make more money off of your child through the traditional methods. But there are lending agencies out there that do manual underwriting, and it would only take a quick search in the search engine to find some. Now, to be completely straightforward, it's not apples to apples. Trying to get a home loan through the traditional method and trying to get it through manual underwriting when having a 0 credit score or a non-existent credit score, they're not apples to apples. It is going to be harder for you to get a home loan without a credit score, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And by the way, doing it this way with a 0 credit score is actually going to save you the most amount of money in the long run anyway. Again, I have another video where we're going to talk about that. So simply put, again, the primary reason that people say you need to go into debt so that you can get a credit score. No, it doesn't make any sense. You only need a credit score if you plan on living a life of debt. And hopefully I've been able to make a decent argument here as to why living a life of debt is costing you a fortune. A fortune. I'm trying to help you here, folks. You don't need to go into debt, and it might be ruining your future. So, simply put, why is debt bad? Because it robs us of our ability to spend and to save. Good luck. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description down below. See ya.